There is something very unusual happening in that location, and I'm now dubbing that location as Area X because of the unusual occurrences. Hello and welcome to Squatchspot.com. I'm Darrin Smith, and I want to thank all of you out there for your continued support of my channel, for leaving those kind messages in the comment section below, and for also hitting that like button. It is truly the encouragement that I am getting from all of you out there that keeps me motivated to continue my search and to be continuing to share my findings on YouTube. So I want to send a big thank you to all of you out there. It is much appreciated. Now, on this episode, I am heading back into that area that I've been investigating for the past few episodes. There is something very unusual happening in that location, and I'm now dubbing that location as Area X because of the unusual occurrences that have been happening there. I don't know if this is Sasquatch related. However, I do think we have to continue our investigation of that area based on a lot of information I am receiving from other individuals within the Bigfoot community. And one of which is I mentioned that in that area I was seeing unusual movement out of the corner of my eye when I looked into that direction. I saw what would be described as a blurred figure moving through the environment. And it didn't have any particular shape, so I couldn't say that it looked like a person or, a Sasquatch. It was just a blurred figure that was moving, and then it would slowly dissipate. And I did receive some information from another friend out there in the community. I'm going to send a shout out to Mike there. Mike offered that the Native Americans called these being shadow people. So I really find this intriguing because it is also known that a lot of the Native American tribes would say that the Sasquatch had the ability to dematerialize. So I'm very interested in seeing that if there is some sort of connection between the shadow people and the Sasquatch phenomenon. As I mentioned numerous times on previous episode, I tend to believe the Sasquatch is more of flesh and blood. However, there's a lot of very credible researchers out there who think otherwise, and there are a lot of eyewitness testimonies and a number of researchers out there that support the Sasquatch does have the ability to dematerialize and cloak itself as it moves through the forest. So I find this very interesting because Area X, our location that we've been investigating, I do see why that particular location would be very alluring to the Sasquatch, which is why I came into the area. Also, I received a first-hand report from a local who had an encounter up here. So that is what brought me to this location to begin with. And then I have had just several unusual happenings in this area that definitely leads me to believe that there is something unusual happening here. However, if it's Sasquatch related, that is yet to be determined. I have received a lot of questions asking how I got involved in Sasquatch research, and although I have mentioned my story before on previous videos, I thought I would do a quick recap here as to what triggered my interest in Sasquatch research and where my investigations have taken me. As I mentioned before, I used to work on board a luxury cruise ship, and from 1999 to 2017, I enjoyed a career at sea that allowed me an incredible opportunity to explore the world extensively, and it also offered me an incredible amount of vacation time, which I spent a significant part of conducting Sasquatch research. It all began in the summer of 2001, when while on a camping trip in Northern California, my nephews and I discovered 15-inch footprints in a very remote area. We made casts of these footprints, and while visiting Willow Creek, we had the great pleasure of meeting famed Sasquatch researcher Al Hodgson, who took a look at our tracks, gave us words of encouragement, and gave us a private tour of the China Flat Museum. It was this incident that started my interest in the Sasquatch research, and from 2001 to 2007, my brother and I ventured to very remote locations around California in search of Sasquatch. Unfortunately, in December of 2006, my brother passed away, which is when I began networking with other Sasquatch researchers. In 2007, by happenstance, I met Cliff Barackman at the Bigfoot Discovery Museum in Felton, California. This meeting was years prior to his work on finding Bigfoot. However, it was clear that Cliff was very knowledgeable about the topic, and he encouraged me to investigate an area along the California Sierra Nevada mountains. Through these years, I continued networking and was going to numerous Sasquatch symposiums and meeting a multitude of very prominent Sasquatch researchers. Since my initial meeting with Cliff in 2007, I was spending a lot of my summer vacations trekking along the Sierra Nevada mountains, and in 2009 I discovered 14-inch footprint impressions in a very remote backcountry location where I was backpacking. While photographing these footprints, I was chased out of the area by a creature making crazed whooping sounds in the nearby woods. However, I continued my investigation of this area, and in 2012 I had a sighting of a juvenile Sasquatch, which I spotted moving up from the brush and fleeing into the woods. That was the fuel that ignited the fire. Continuing my quest, I began heading out with the Bigfoot Field Researchers organizations, and between the years of 2012 and 2017, I had gone on over a dozen expeditions with the BFRO in various locations across the United States, and I continued my own personal pursuits in other supposed hotspots across the country. In 2017, my career at sea came to an end, at which point I moved into my home in the California Sierra Nevada mountains, where I continue my personal investigation into the Sasquatch phenomenon. And my journey continues. So I brought some interesting equipment that we're going to be using on this outing, and I've shared this with you before, and it's that mini digital recorder that I purchased for my FLIR. It's the Angel Eye DVR, and as you recall, my FLIR unit does not have the ability to record internally, so I bought the Angel Eye digital recorder to connect to my FLIR, so I would have the ability to record the images that were coming from the FLIR unit. So that was the compromise that I made. I couldn't afford the higher end FLIR models, and I was really happy with this setup because the digital recorder can hold a tremendous amount of information. It has really good battery life, so I could basically keep the digital recorder running the entire time I'm using the FLIR, and the FLIR battery is going to run out way before the DVR's battery runs out or the memory card fills up. So it really gives me a great opportunity to record all that FLIR footage that I get out in the field. So I'm really happy with this mini DVR. And what's great is it comes with a little camera. And what we're going to do today, I have a little bit of Velcro attached to the back of the camera, and I have a little bit of Velcro attached to the back of my bag. So we're going to set up the camera here, and I'm going to be recording everything that the camera is seeing behind me. And I think this is going to be a great tool during our investigation, because I'm heading back into Area X to try to capture that visual anomaly. And having this camera recording at all times is going to really enhance those efforts. And also what's great about having this camera monitoring the environment behind you is it has happened before that people have done something similar and they actually picked up what they believe was a Sasquatch moving through the woods behind them. And I think the Sasquatch are very intelligent in the sense that they will stay hidden, but they are also very aware of our visual capabilities, especially at nighttime. And it could happen that you walk past a Sasquatch that's hiding in the brush, and as you get past it, it moves to relocate. And with the camera recording the environment behind you, you have a really good chance of capturing that on camera. Okay, so we are heading down into that bowl shape that I've been telling you. It's Area X, and we've had some unusual happenings down there in that particular location. So I'll move the camera back so you can kind of see what I'm looking at here. We're coming down off a ridge, and we're coming down into this bowl-shaped environment here. And it's at the floor there where all this unusual activity is happening. Now, there's nothing particular foreboding about this environment, but for some reason, there just seems to be some unusual happenings occurring here. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see it very well there, but in the background there, it slopes back up. So we're moving down off this ridge into this little lowered out area that's kind of surrounded by these hills, because now on the other side, once it levels out, it just goes back up again. And it's down in this particular bowl environment that we're having all these unusual happenings. So I guess we head down there and continue our investigation. Area X has a history of Sasquatch activity. I have received first-hand reports from this area, and having done considerable reconnaissance using Google Earth and throughout my investigation of this area, I do see why this particular location would be enticing for the Sasquatch. On my first visit to the area on January 1st, 2021, I took note of several strategic nuances in the area that the Sasquatch would be drawn to, and I discovered some very interesting impressions in the snow. Returning to the area days later, I was getting some very unusual feedback on my parabolic microphone, and I was stopped in my tracks by a very loud and very unusual sound. that I later dismissed as a woodpecker hitting a hollowed out log. Okay, I have no clue what that sound was. On January 12th, I returned to the area wearing a red shirt. Based on statistical data, the majority of individuals going missing in the national forests are wearing red. And if these missing person cases are the result of Sasquatch activity, I was hoping to at least lure one in. While in the area, I was detecting a very unusual visual anomaly moving throughout the forest, which I described as an area that was blurred and moving through the environment before eventually fading away. Concluding this could not have been a trick of light, I remained in the area throughout the night until the very early morning hours, conducting night surveillance. And although I did not have anything compelling happen to encourage that the Sasquatch were in the area, I did pick up some very unusual clicking sounds on the parabolic microphone. Returning to the area March 3rd, I discovered some very interesting impressions in the snow that were consistent in size and shape, and although these tracks were not fresh, there were possible evidence of toes on the impressions. Having difficulty traversing the forest following the devastating Mono windstorms that had recently hit the area and had downed hundreds of trees, I found myself moving through the dark, and while doing so, I heard possible coyotes in the area, and later I was stopped dead in my tracks as I heard something very large moving in the forest in very close proximity to me. However, flooring the area, I could not see the source of the movement. Intrigued by the unusual happenings in this area, I returned to continue my investigation of this location, and on March 19th, I was picking up some very unusual readings on my EMF detector, and I was also seeing that unexplained visual anomaly I had noted previously. Also, throughout my investigation of this particular location, I often find myself experiencing emotional uneasiness. It is something I usually do not experience while out in the forest. However, in this particular location, it seems prevalent. And now I've returned to Area X to continue my investigation of this mysterious location. Okay, so we're back at Area X. I've been moving around quite a bit trying to pick up anything on the EMF detector. However, I have not detected any sort of activity in this area, which definitely makes our previous visit even more intriguing. And I haven't really felt any sort of emotional anxiety. It's a beautiful day. I'm surprised to see that all the snow in this area had melted off because we had quite a bit of snow up here and it hasn't been extraordinarily warm, so it's just kind of surprising to see that most of the snow is gone here. But definitely interesting. I've swept the area. I haven't gotten any sort of signals on this. I haven't seen any of that blurred figure moving through the forest. I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. I haven't felt any sort of emotional anxiety. So that definitely creates more intrigue for me that something has changed in the environment. Before, when we were here, we had some unusual happenings, but on this visit, so far, I haven't come up with anything. So I'm going to continue my efforts moving around the forest here using the EMF detector and just seeing if I can pick up anything out of the ordinary. I've been at it for hours now, and I haven't received any unusual readings on the EMF detector. I haven't seen that visual anomaly, and I haven't experienced any of that emotional anxiety. So it definitely adds a lot of intrigue over our last encounter here, because there was a dramatic difference between our last visit and this visit. The last visit, I was getting some very unusual readings throughout this environment that were sporadic. I was catching that unusual movement at the corner of my eye and seeing that blurred figure moving through the environment, and I was experiencing that emotional anxiety. So it is really interesting that there is a measurable difference between our last visit here and this visit. So I definitely think something very unusual was happening the last time we were here, and also the previous visits. So I'll definitely be keeping Area X under surveillance. I'll be stopping by from time to time to kind of check out the environment. But as spring is here, the Sasquatch are going to start making their move up to those higher elevations. So I'm not so interested in spending too much time in this area, because I want to get up on those other ridge lines near where I found that nest site. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done here, because we have there's a window of opportunity that is closing here, because once the Sasquatch are on the move, it's going to be very difficult to keep up with them. And when they move up to those higher elevations, they're going to be in very remote locations that are going to be difficult to access. So we definitely want to be on top of our game here, and we definitely want to be putting a lot of time out in the field and getting up on those higher elevations now where the snow line is. So I'm not going to spend too much more time here in Area X. I think I'm going to be focusing my efforts at this point up on those higher ridges. Area X continues to be a mystery. Clearly, we have had some very unusual happenings at this location throughout our investigation, from the unusual visual anomalies to the measurable EMF readings. And on this visit, it is apparent that something has changed in the environment. The question is what? There are two major camps within the Bigfoot community: those who believe the Sasquatch are an animal or relic hominid, and those who believe there is something truly unique about these creatures, whether they are paranormal, interdimensional, or extraterrestrial. And although I tend to lean more towards the former, I cannot dismiss all the eyewitness testimonies and evidence to the contrary, or my own personal experiences. I do believe there is something very unusual happening here in Area X. However, I have no clue if it is Sasquatch related. And although I am open to the possibilities the Sasquatch do have extraordinary abilities, I need more evidence to support this. We do know the Sasquatch have migratory movement patterns that correlate to readily available resources, and these movement patterns are predictable, which to me suggests these creatures are more likely of flesh and blood. If they did have advanced cloaking technologies and the like, I would think they would be limitless in their range, and we would have sightings being reported in more metropolitan areas and where resources are more readily available. However, it's just not the case. Clearly, these creatures have limitations. What they are is still a mystery, and I am going to continue my quest for answers. And until next time, I'm Darrin Smith, and I'll see you here at Squatchspot.com.